Hello everyone, it's Dr. Connor.
And Dr. Victoria with Tree of Life Chiropractic, and we're here today to do the third episode for you guys in our stress series, and this one's about the gut and also known as our second brain.
Yes. Have you ever thought about how the brain and gut are connected? Or have you ever thought of food and ended up being hungry? I know I have.
I've definitely been hangry.
Yeah, so all of this is happening because your brain and your gut are connected. Same thing happens when you go do a speech or have some big event and you end up with butterflies in your stomach.
Or uncontrollable bowels.
Yes, one of those. This has everything to do with the fact that our body is fully connected. But when you think about the brain and the gut, they have to really communicate with each other both ways to make sure that everything is functioning properly.
Yep, which basically means that our gut and our brain connection can be really susceptible to different stressors and emotions that we're experiencing. So some common conditions that we're referring to when we're talking about the gut, and just to be clear, the gut includes your mouth, the point of entry of food, and then also all the way through to the point of exit. So because some of you are watching this in the bathroom, which we've been told.
Yeah, we have.
We're going to talk about what's happening right now. So some common conditions that this can be, related to as far as stress in the GI system are things like IBS, IBD, GERD, ulcers, things like that, and some common symptoms if you want to go through those.
Yep. So pain, bloating, constipation, diarrhea. So this is, again, esophagus, stomach, digestive system, all the way down to the exit.
Yeah, exactly. So we have a little diagram for you to talk about this whole thing as far as the stress response goes. So we have our big stressor here, and that stressor, remember, can be physical, chemical, or emotional stressors. And when that stress gets put into the brain, what's happening to our GI tract is that the oxygen levels are decreasing and also the blood flow is decreasing. So this right here is going to be the reason why some of you experience different symptoms like pain, bloating, cramping, things like that are all related to those two things happening there. And then the other big thing that's happening is some hormones are going to be getting released. So from the brain, we're going to get a release of adrenaline and cortisol, which we talked about in our last video. Those are going to be the big stress hormones. The new one here, serotonin, is something that is mostly found in our guts, and serotonin here can be impacting things like our mood, it can impact our sleep, it can also impact things like sexual desire. All of that stuff is affected by serotonin, which means it's also affected by stress. So stress coming into the brain is going to affect the levels of serotonin that we have in our system.
Yep, and that has everything to do with the fact that it's, again, that fight or flight mechanism, that sympathetic versus parasympathetic part of our autonomic nervous system. So as chiropractors, what we do is we are very good at being able to find the areas that are creating that extra stress in the system and stimulate the parasympathetic side so that you can balance out the sympathetic, parasympathetic function and allow your full body to function more properly.
Yeah, and one thing I didn't have on the diagram, but I wanted to talk about when stress gets prolonged for a long period of time and we're under something like chronic stress, how that's impacting the gut is a little bit different. Now you're dealing with things like leaky gut, which I'm sure you've heard about. It's a pretty big buzzword, but when we have leaky gut due to chronic stress levels, what's happening is not only is food particles getting out of our GI system and going into our bloodstream, but also so are the microbiomes and different bacteria. So sometimes that's not a great system, and that could also lead to chronic inflammation and things like autoimmune disorder too. So autoimmune can definitely spin from the gut issues because that's, those systems are so interconnected.
Yep, and that's a great tie-in to my next point, where because the brain and body are so connected, it doesn't only, with the brain-gut connection, it's not only a neurological thing, but it's also a hormonal and an immunological connection. Because all of this is happening because your body needs to know, or your brain needs to know exactly what's happening so that you can survive. So when your stomach is empty and you're hungry, your brain needs to know that. It needs to be able to get the food that it needs. It needs to be able to make sure that everything is absorbing properly in your digestive tract, and if that's not happening, the brain needs to know. So that is one of the reasons why there's so many different changes that can happen when you have an issue in your gut, and it starts to actually create even emotional changes.
Yep. What we also wanted to include here in our last minute of this video is just give you some ways to support your GI system, especially when you're stressed, but always. These things are great for you always. So a couple things there is decreasing your alcohol content. I mean, that is huge because alcohol is a sugar, and that's going to, wreak havoc on many different systems in our body, but especially the GI system, especially when you're stressed, which is unfortunate because a lot of us turn to that when we're stressed, but I don't know. And then the other big thing is just decreasing sugar in general and increasing foods that are probiotic or probiotics themselves. So you can take a probiotic or you can increase probiotic containing foods like fermented vegetables such as sauerkraut, kimchi, and then also kombucha is a great one too.
Yeah. So I hope that you learned a lot from this video. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're very, very happy to inform you on any of these topics that we are going over here. Through our series. The next video is going to be all about immune system. I know we've done a little bit more on that with a different series, but we're going to dive into that as well on this one as well.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Yes. Hope to see you there.